Come on, everyone sit down and listen to the greatest debate in all of history. We'll give you everything that you've been missing. Introducing Nothing Specialty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nothing Specialty Podcast, where we dive into deep discussions and hard-hitting debate. My name is Chris, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Ben.
Can any of you hear me yet? I'm trapped on the internet, and I can't get out.
I mean, they may hear you, but unless you're checking the email, nothingspecialtypodcast@gmail.com, I don't think you're going to hear back.
I'd like to hear all your thoughts on me being trapped inside the internet. Is this a good or a bad thing? Start the discussion. It matters.
Yes. So is it a petition to get you out of the internet, or is it deciding whether or not it's a good thing that you're trapped in the internet?
We'll start with how they all feel. Considering my lack of care for their opinions on other topics in the past, though, I get the strange feeling there might be a strong for me being stuck in here where I have very little impacts outside the podcast.
Yeah,
I
see
did
that.
insult Ocarina of Time. I might be screwed here.
Yes. I'm sure everyone out there is a reasonable human being and understands that some people like things and some people oh wait, no, this is the internet. Oh yeah, never mind, you're screwed.
Yeah, I was about to say I disagree. There are Ocarina of Time's fans out there.
Uh-huh.
If they were going to be reasonable, they picked an interesting time to start.
Yeah.
Shots fired. Just remember, if you vote to keep me in here, I still win, because that means I got to you.
Yeah. You were influenced by him. So it's a kind of danged if you do, danged if you don't. Because if you don't, then people might vote to free you, and then all hell will break loose at that point. Anyways,
literally, I was born on tax day. I probably was spawned, if we're being 100% honest here.
I forgot about that.
Side note, as far as Zelda goes, I finished Breath of the Wild again finally.
Cool.
I got the DLC for it when I first got it, but I never really delved too far into it. I don't remember why. But this time I actually did I completionist. I did the completing it challenge.
Did you get the gold poop?
Regrettably, yes. Anyways,
you did. You found all the Koroks. Oh my gosh!
That was actually that part was a chore, but it wasn't that hard because unlike getting all the shrines, you're just finding the little areas.
Yeah.
And the internet did me a solid and gave me a map of where to go.
Yeah,
and there's
good.
so many. I think it was 500, which means the hardest part was finding a website that essentially broke down parts of the map so that I could zoom in and use landmarks to figure out where stuff was. But once I figured that out and I got a system down, I think it took me about 8 hours. So
Really?
not an insignificant amount of time.
Yeah.
Especially since some of the areas actually were in places where I actually got to do stuff, such as fight enemies. At one point, I ended up just killing a Lionel because it was in a spot where every time I tried to get it completed, the Lionel would just kill me. So I actually ended up having to fight a Lionel to get this one. I'm sure I could have found a way to not have to, but it literally just reached a point where I was like, fuck this Lionel.
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to do it without killing you, but it's a matter of principle now. You're dying.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, one thing I did not know, and again, probably if you don't know, I don't get to spend a lot of time on video games, hence the reason, I think I've talked about this in the past, it took me a while to get to Mass Effect. I did not know there was a motorcycle in Breath of the Wild for completing one of the DLCs.
Huh.
It's far enough in to where I didn't really have an impact other than making the exploration of Hyrule Castle a lot more fun, as well as hunt. It helped with the Korok seeds.
Oh,
It made
okay.
traveling a lot faster. But also, and this is what I found very interesting. It once you acquire it. So first off, for any of you who don't know, most of you probably do and think, "Wow, this guy's a fucking idiot for not figuring this out by now." But for any of you who don't know, it's the motorcycle that you get in Mario Kart for Link. So I now know why that was included in Mario Kart. And also, it it appears on this. You know how like every time you get a divine beast, like your loading screen, it's included in your loading screen.
Interesting. So it's like divine beast level kind of thing?
Not really. It's more or less just fun.
Yeah. Or maybe they were thinking that after you get it, you're never going to use a horse again.
I mean, I didn't, other than fighting. I liked using horses to fight the, what are they called? The walking guardians. The big ones.
Okay.
Because horses let you really get a few good hits on them really quick, and then you just jump off and finish them off. So I abused like the fact that horses let you really it gives you an edge up on them. Also, they're fast enough where if they start getting away, you're just kind of fucked. I think you can hit them in the eye with an arrow, but I didn't know that until recently, actually. So I did it the hard way, and I beat the shit out of them using a horse, which I like to think is more fun.
Yeah. What I always did for them is wait for them to shoot and reflect the beam with a shield.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, I did find out something else interesting. I didn't think about it until after our last video. We had talked about like Ocarina of Time, and one of the things I've heard as far as the complaint went is the lack of real dungeons in Breath of the Wild from like classic Zelda fans. But I went back and I looked at how much time I've spent on the second. So this was not I don't even think it was my second playthrough. It was probably my third or fourth when I did a completion style. And excluding the Korok seeds, I spent about 48 hours on the game. One might argue that just means I sucked, but like I just kind of took my time and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like I used it as an excuse to explore and do everything. So if we just take my shrines into account, completing shrines, there was a good 8 hours of shrines in there. And that's just the shrines. That's not anything else. So as far as like content goes, yes, you don't have big dungeons anymore, but there's technically more dungeon-esque stuff to do, just in bite-sized amounts.
Yeah, well, that was the complaint, was that they were all the same looking. So like they
weren't even the same looking though. Like
in the other games, you had a big like temple that was themed a specific way. So it would be like if there were like 10 shrines that had one wallpaper, and then another 10 had a different wallpaper, and theming and
I disagree strongly. Most of them had completely different expectations and challenges.
Yeah, but they all looked the same. That was the biggest complaint that I heard was they all looked the same. They all had the same theme.
The complaint I heard was like there just wasn't enough to like, oh, I just wanted a big dungeon. I wanted a meal. But if you do what I did and you sat down and you started doing like a bunch of the shrines, like there was definitely more than a meal there. I guess what I'm saying is content-wise, you weren't losing out on anything.
Yeah, it's just
and there was plenty of puzzles and good ones. There were some that weren't that great. I won't lie and say that the ones that required to use the Joy-Cons were like the best idea ever, but I feel like those were just poorly. My same complaint for Ocarina of Time, actually, for those. They're not difficult, but they're also just like there to absorb your time.
Yeah. Although the one with
that's what I would call them.
There's one with the ball drops from the top, and you have to do like a maze, turning the Joy-Con around in your hand. But if you talk to the thing, but like immediately, as soon as you can start moving, flip your Joy-Con upside down. It flips the whole maze upside down, so it's just a flat bottom that the ball falls onto, and then you just roll it to the exit.
Yep.
That was a funny exploit.
I learned about that later because someone was asking me why I did it a certain way I did. I did it a different way where I tilted it, so when the ball drops, it got to the exit of the maze or near the exit, letting me just have I didn't really have to traverse the maze. I just had to figure out how to use the physics to jump the ball, which wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
The one I really enjoyed that did require the Joy-Cons was it was essentially golf.
Huh.
I
don't think I ever did
and
that.
They were
shrine.
twisted. Yeah, you had to hit it a certain way and get it like in a certain direction. So I enjoyed that one, but the other ones I would agree that I could see why they would upset and be frustrated. frustrating.
Yeah,
because the Joy-Cons aren't they're not like, the thing is you have to like really twist. First off, actually I should say you can't keep your Joy-Cons connected to your Switch if you want to do it. So if you're doing it in handheld mode, you have to take your Joy-Cons out. Because eventually you can't see your screen if you twist them too much. Yeah. And then second would be you have to twist them so much to the point where it's no longer a skill of dexterity. It's more of a, how do I figure out this very... I know this is going to sound weird, but it's like way too sensitive. There's too much that it takes, like, or it's just not sensitive enough in one case because you have to twist them so much. But like, there's just, it wasn't refined enough. That's the bottom line.
But I think so. Going back to the like what the complaints were, I don't know about everyone else, but what I didn't like about the shrines was that it was the thought of an adventure. You know, you're going to a place that is all enclosed and connected and big, and like everything connects to each other. So you're not like, when you go through a temple, you're not going through a room has a puzzle, then you go to the next room, it has a puzzle, then you go to the next room that has a puzzle. Like, you have to explore, especially in Twilight Princess, you have to explore the place and find something over here and then go back and use it over there, and really, you know, it's all interconnected. And so, and then like one room that you could access part of before, now you can access more of it, so then it recontextualizes all of the harms that are in that room, and so then it gives you a new challenge that's half familiar but half like different. And it's just that kind of stuff was not possible in the small bite-sized shrines because they were each individual. So once you're done with that one puzzle, you're gone and back into the overworld. You know, there's no sense of like a big dungeon that I'm like halfway through, you know, that's like, oh, I've done 5 shrines now, so I've done a lot, but then there's no sense of like, I have to find the end and beat the boss, you know?
Yeah, I guess the thing is, I enjoyed having my freedom in Breath of the Wild, and that's something you couldn't have in the previous game.
Well, you're free to walk away from the temples at any time. It's just you want to explore and do them.
I want to be... No, so again, I understand that. I'm saying I enjoy the overworld more than I enjoyed the temples in previous games.
Yeah, the overworld is a huge marked improvement over everything, but like it's also...
I mean, I wouldn't even say it's just a marked improvement. I would say there's actually an overworld, and I don't count Ocarina of Time's horse segments. That's just... It was like, oh, here's some stuff. Also, you're going to fight some goblins on horseback. It was like, it wasn't like... Actually, one example would be there's a guardian at a what's it called? Spring. And you can't tame it like a horse, but it's essentially a deer that looks like mystical. It's glowing blue and everything.
I think I've seen that. And while you
can't tame it and register it, if you have maximum stamina, you can... so I guess you can tame it, but you just can't register it.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the fastest mount in the game.
So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there,
other than the motorcycle. So, but I'm saying is, I couldn't get that in previous games. So like, I get where you're coming from. It doesn't have a dungeon that like feels big and all like encompassing, and it doesn't obviously force you to stay in the dungeon. But it was also missing the big world, and I feel like, I'm not saying you couldn't have both, but the way it functions, I think, works well with the big world.
It's because they needed to stuff,
if that makes sense,
the big world full of stuff to do. And so they made, hundreds of Korok seeds and like 100-something shrines, so that there's actually something to fill the world. But beside those two things, there's not a whole lot there in the world, you know? And
well, I mean, like I just said, mathematically wise, there is a lot there. It does take up a lot of your time. And it's not just like it's taking up your time for the sake of taking up time. It's actually like, I don't know, in my opinion, it's fun, and like, I enjoyed it. Would you say did you enjoy finishing Breath of the Wild? Did you enjoy playing it?
I enjoyed it a lot. I just think I would have liked it better had if they had a big, like, so like there's
that
one
same
place
world
in it
with big dungeons.
Yeah, there's one place in it where it's like you go there and it's called like the Forgotten Temple or something. You have to do some like jump off ledges at different places to actually get in there. It's like in a crevice somewhere, but it looks like the entrance to an old temple, like from an old Zelda game. And if you could actually just go inside there and like have a giant dungeon adventure, like that would have, I think, sated all of my desires for that kind of stuff that was missing, that I felt was missing from Breath of the Wild. But even that, it was just a facade. You couldn't go in. So it's like,
yeah,
it was even there, and there was a place for it, and it would have made sense for it to be a gigantic, cavernous cave underneath the world, because you had to like fall down into a crack to get to it. So it wouldn't have conflicted with any of the rest of the world to have them make a gigantic dungeon in there that would have been really fun to explore and do a bunch of stuff in, but they focused on other stuff and didn't have time for that, I guess, or didn't want to do that. I
feel like it was a time and content issue. There was already a lot in there.
Yeah.
However, I would say if they could do all the things I like about it, plus have big dungeons in the sequel, it'll blow me away and I'll love it. As long as it's not like the Ninja Yiga clan, that's it. Yiga clan hideout where you're stuck in it without a way to get out until you just complete it. Unless like there's no save point. Like I want to be able to leave it freely. Especially if I like accidentally go in there when I shouldn't. Like I'm under leveled or I just have bad gear or something.
You weren't able to leave the Yiga hideout?
You can, but like you can't save. I don't want to have a point where I can't save properly. Or it only lets me have auto saves. Yeah, you can't save in the Yiga clan hideout.
Weird.
It's probably not a big deal in non-master mode, and in master mode, those guys, like, even if you have max hearts, 2 hits and you're dead. So you have to stealth it.
Yeah.
I guess you don't have to. I'm sure there's people out there who have done it not stealthing it, but it's such a big pain in the ass, it's not worth it, in my opinion. If you're doing it for the sake of saying you did it, not because it's the smart thing to do.
Yeah. And
when enemies start coming at you, they fly at you hard.
I had forgotten about that Yiga clan hideout, and that I think was one of the more fun times for me. I didn't play master like version or anything, but I had a lot of fun in that like hideout where it was room to room and there were multiple things to do. Like I would have liked it to be bigger, but that was along the lines of something that things that I would want to see more of. Was like that.
I feel like the compromise we got there is that the world was much bigger and much more interactive.
Yeah.
Instead of having multiple big interactive dungeons, we got a very big world. And I really enjoyed exploring the world.
Yeah.
Especially since you could tell, like, this is the world after essentially the apocalypse has happened. This is this world's apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I'd say that. This is the world without Hylians ruling it, actually, is what I would say. Because nature seems to be going along great. I mean, who knows what would have happened if Zelda weren't like trapping Calamity Ganon, but like nature doesn't seem to give a fuck.
Yeah, it wasn't like a disaster that destroyed the world. It was the fall of a kingdom, basically.
Yep.
So.
But yeah,
and there was no big kingdom to come in and replace it. It just kind of left a vacuum. So then there were just little towns and villages. So yeah, I don't want to give the wrong impression. I did enjoy Breath of the Wild. I just, as a picky fan, call back to last week. I want to be more controlling. I want to say like, we'll do this and then don't do that because that's stupid. But do this one instead, and I want to micromanage what they should do for the sequel. But I really just gotta whatever this was great. They'll do even better next time. Just leave it alone.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think if I did anything. I've just been working my butt off this week. Drove a bunch of Uber in my spare time so that I could get some spending money, because every bit of our income is going to bills. So that's always fun. Ooh. But so
should have stayed in Arizona.
Yeah, but I guess while I was driving around and doing that stuff, I was listening to some books. So I don't know. I won't spend a lot of time on it. But have you heard of Pastwatch?
I don't think so.
It's by Orson Scott Card. It's a really interesting. He's the same guy who did Ender's Game. and all those books.
Yeah, I remember the name.
So Pastwatch was a really interesting like mix between sci-fi and like an alternative history, because it's basically like way in the future the world is dying and they need to find a way to like fix it, but there's no way, and it's just they're gonna go into an ice age and everything's gonna be bad, but they're, you know, humans will survive and then they'll start over from tribes after the ice age is over, you know. But they were trying to figure out a way to fix things, and they had this technology called Pastwatch where they could like pick a place and a time in the past and watch what happened there. And so they could create, basically they could look into the past. But then they realized that they could affect the past as well. And so they did a bunch of research on how to do that, and they figured out they could send things into the past. And so they ended up, after a lot of discussion about it and what to do, and also figuring out that another future had already done that and messed with the past and into their current future. So they already had an edited, you know, current, which was that Christopher Columbus, instead, because he originally wanted to go eastward and like take back Constantinople from the Turks in a giant holy war crusade, but apparently that ended horribly, and maybe something else bad happened in the Americas, because, you know, Christopher Columbus didn't stop them from developing further into their technologies, and like a giant Native American army came sailing over to Europe or something and massacred a bunch of people. Like, who knows? Or maybe like human sacrifice was the like tolerated thing instead of slavery. And so they were trying to prevent that. So
is that an actual thing that happened in the book? Like Christopher Columbus didn't...
Yeah, so well, they figured out the point at which Christopher Columbus decided to go west instead of east. And what they found was he was on a beach after like washing up after a wreck on the sea, and he kneeled and like was praying, and this showed up on the Pastwatch viewing thing. They saw God, Jesus, and a dove representing the Holy Ghost appear to him and talk to him. But they're like, well, wait a second. Visions like that are supposed to just be for the person. Why were they physically there? You know, if that is a thing that happens, then, you know, we shouldn't have been able to see it. And so then they looked closer, and there was a futuristic holographic projection device on the beach waiting for Christopher Columbus as he washed up on that shore. And they figured out that it was planted by some other future that had ended up horribly, they assumed. And they just figured out that apparently would have happened had Columbus not gone west. So they decided to send Columbus west on a holy quest from God. And so he took his ambition, and instead of pushing it toward, you know, retaking Constantinople, he pushed it toward going west and finding the continent that God promised was there. And that's why he was so adamant that there was something there and that it was reachable. And so but him doing that kind of triggered a lot of the bad things like slavery that happened. And the current future that's in Pastwatch, the book, was trying to prevent that stuff. And so they saw that it was possible, that another future had done it. So they tried to fix their future. But instead of just sending like a projection, a device, they sent 3 people. And those 3 people did things like they prepared the Native Americans by giving them extra technologies like iron ahead of time. And then another destroyed Christopher Columbus's ships so he couldn't get back to Spain originally. And then the third one like had integrated to the tribes that Christopher Columbus first ran into. And, you know, so now that his ships are gone, they kind of Christopher Columbus stayed with that tribe and then was able to be taught by this third person that, you know, people of different color are not inhuman, or, you know, shouldn't be automatically thought of as slaves, and that everyone is equal. And so then planting that in the 15th century really probably benefited like all the hundreds of years in the future, because there would have been no slavery in America, and we could have put that effort into, you know, instead of enslaving people and trading them, having them be workers and building a better economy, and then people can, have more leisure time to invent things earlier than before. And so it just would have been, a lot better, and a lot less atrocities would have happened. So they did that, and they changed the future. So those 3 people that they sent back are the only 3 that still exist. The rest of the future that sent them, you can only assume it just disappeared, or it's still going, but they don't know it. The only thing that matters to the people that were sent was that now this is their present, and their future is completely different.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it was a really interesting take on what time travel would do, and the costs of that, and then how to do it wrong and how to do it right. How to affect the past in an ignorant way, and how to affect it in an actually productive way. So it's kind of interesting.
I mean, I like the sound of it, except for the fact that it implies that Christopher Columbus wasn't a fucking idiot who just didn't know what he was doing.
Well, I mean, so the history of it is he spent decades trying to convince the court at Spain, or the king or queen or something, that it was worthwhile. And it was a long time that he waited there just trying to push and push. And it just doesn't make sense for him to have done that if he didn't believe wholeheartedly that there was something to gain from going that direction, I
mean, he was just trying to find a different way to Spain, and he failed.
To India, yeah. But
also, he was trying to find a different way to India, and he failed. Also, he thought that the locals he ran into were in India, despite the fact that most people are like, yeah, you're wrong, bro. Then when the locals treated him well, he took it as an act of violence, and nothing. Also, he never discovered America. He discovered islands.
Yeah. Haiti and the Dominican Republic.
Everything about him is just one big, and everything that we're taught, we were taught in schools, because I know they aren't teaching it anymore because it was inaccurate, was based off of one Western writer who essentially decided that books wouldn't sell well unless he told a very amended plus doctored history of what Christopher Columbus actually did.
Yeah, but this is very clear about the slaughtering of Native Americans and the bad things that happened as well. It just kind of delved into his motivations and what would cause a man to push so hard to go that direction. And it wasn't that God had, in the vision, the holographic display, that God had told him that there was a new continent to the west and he should find it. No, he said there's a land so far east that you can only get to it going west, or something like that, something more cryptic. And so he assumed, the eastern areas, that's India and Japan and China, I need to get there by going west. But he was never told that. So he wasn't told inaccurate things, but he made inaccurate assumptions. So yes, he was very stupid about it. But he did decide, God told me to go west, so I have to go west, and was very bullheaded about
that. I do like that it wasn't actually God, though.
Yeah, it wasn't actually God. It was the future that screwed everything up.
I guess the way you've clarified it now, he just sounds like just as big of an idiot, if not worse.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm more okay with this. Sorry, I'm not a big fan of him. I don't like people who bastardize history, because I like history and I don't like learning the wrong things.
Yeah, no, this was very, very accurate and precise about all of its history stuff. And I'm sure if I looked up the stuff that it was saying, I would find accurate stuff. Because, I mean, it is an alternative history, but they created the alternative history when they went back, not prior to that.
Yeah.
So everything prior to that is our history that was very well researched and portrayed in a very interesting way. So
I just realized I might hate it just as much because everything I said about the author who made Christopher Columbus look like a good guy, where he rewrote history. They're essentially doing the same thing. I literally just complained about the thing this book is all about. So yeah, I might still hate it. I have no justification outside of it is exactly what I hate about how Christopher Columbus became famous.
They're not trying to pass that off as the real thing.
I know. I'm aware of that. That's why I said I'm well aware of the fact that I am clearly just have some bias here. But I just realized I just bitched about like the very thing that it is, except for the fact that it's not trying to pass itself off as the actual history of the world. So I might hate it for all the I want to say wrong reasons, but definitely not like completely justifiable. I am aware that I just dislike it for this reason, kind of reasons. Yeah. I'm self-aware of my distaste for it, at least. Uh-huh. That I can say.
Well, I've got the audio files for it if you ever wanted to listen to it. So,
okay.
Which kind of transitions into the next topic.
All right, go ahead, man.
So, for our topic this week, we are going to talk about dumb laws, superfluous laws, laws that shouldn't exist or that don't need to exist or that society would be better without. So one of which that I believe wholeheartedly in is piracy. So I don't think that the copyright should extend to a person giving another person the data, because that data is so easily reproducible. You know, you can copy it and copy it and copy it ad nauseum without any expense. And so giving that data to a friend should not be a crime. If you've acquired that data, bought it, or another friend has shared it to you, then sharing it to someone else should not be illegal. You know, like it's crazy that is a crime. And that's all that people on peer-to-peer sharing, like torrents and stuff, are doing, is they're sharing it with other people. And so, I don't know, it just seems that copyright should be like, hey, don't burn this onto a new DVD and sell it. Like, of course, that's illegal. But if you're not selling it, it's just like on YouTube. If you have like copyrighted material in your video, but you're not monetizing it, then it should be left up and it should be untouched. You know, it should be fine there. But if you try to monetize it, then it should go under review for like, well, is this fair use or not? And what I'll have, you know, are the people who own the material complaining about it, or are they not complaining? Like, all of that then goes into effect if you're monetizing it. But if you're not making money off of it, then it's not hurting anyone. In fact, it would make people curious about that, especially if it's not just the whole thing, you know, beginning to end. And then they would want to go seek out the official release of it, or find a friend who already has it and get it from them. But like, you know, it's like sharing. You know, should it be illegal for one guy who has a DVD of a movie to let a friend borrow that DVD just because the friend wasn't the one who actually bought it? You know, it seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah. The only counter argument I could really give to that one, and I feel like this might be worth credence, is content creators could be affected. And I think it depends. So like using Rick and Morty as an example, back when we were afraid we weren't going to get any more because they were in a dispute with the people, Adult Swim, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. Part of the problem was the fact that they were only getting money from the official like release of the show. They weren't getting the merchandising money from that. Yeah. So they actually, and the merchandising money was where the money was at. And for a few reasons. One of the primary ones was the fact that Rick and Morty it was only released on cable or Adult Swim website if you bought it, I believe.
I think you had to prove that you had cable in order to stream it from their website.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was very restricted. And so what happened was it was being pirated everywhere and shared everywhere. And essentially the people creating it were making almost no money, but Adult Swim was making buku dollars off of merchandise. And I get that now they're making money off of merchandise, but not every series is going to get that. Mm-hmm. That much money off of merchandising. And so I think that's where the problem is. I feel like also your logic of as long as I'm not selling it, it isn't a big deal. I feel like a good middle ground to prevent that problem would be it's illegal if you send it online to someone. It's legal if I were to in person hand you data.
Would it have to be in person? Or could I stick the data on a flash drive and mail it to you? It's not over the internet.
I guess I shouldn't say in person. Yeah, I guess I should say it can't be shared as a data file over the internet. It needs to be sent in a way that actually causes you like some sort of effort. Like it's not just, oh, I downloaded it online kind of thing, you know, like, because eventually, like, I understand that right now, and I've seen South Park, like, I remember South Park's episode where they make fun of it by, like, showing the fact that, like, all these creators could only buy only one island instead of two, and, like, a rapper could only get his kid, like, one pony or something because of people stealing their stuff. But the alternative is, if it wasn't illegal, they won't make anything. And right now, one of the few payoffs for artists is the fact that maybe they might one day become big and famous. And that's part of the drive is I might not never be famous and I might live in this shitty studio apartment for the rest of my life, but it's also possible my band might make it Beatles big one day and I'll be rich. And that isn't a possibility really if we suddenly make it so getting everyone's content is just free. And there is an example of that. Anime is incredible, is one of the biggest pirated things out there. And it's for two reasons, actually. One is the Adult Swim reason. A lot of anime are not readily available and readily subtitled or dubbed. So it's just, so people just pirate it and then dub it themselves, or not dub it, sorry, subtitle it themselves. But a lot of it is just not made available to people in America or Western countries, but it's still like sought after, and as a result, the way to get it is to pirate it. But because that precedent has been set, people just start pirating all the animes.
So I think
instead, like they don't draw the line. Like one person I listened to online, I remember who it was. I don't remember what YouTuber creator it was, but he said this is his line in the sand. If he can actually acquire the anime, he will buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But if the only way for him to get it is to pirate it, he's not trying to be like, it's not that he wants to, it's that he's been forced into it. Because the only way for him to get it is to pirate it. And if the studio chooses not to allow people in America to get a hold of it, well, that's on them. That's their fault for not trying to make money outside of Japan or whatever country it came from. And I guess the thing I was going to say was, in Japan, animators and stuff and a lot of creators are like, they're paid the equivalent of like fast food employees here, kind of thing, you know, like they're paid shit. And as a result, it's really caused us, like, the people doing it there are doing it out of love, like just because they enjoy it, but like they really aren't being well compensated. And would we really want that environment here where, like, I don't know, if you said you like writing in our previous one, could you imagine if you wrote your book and then you made like next to nothing off of it, despite all the like hard work and stuff you put into it?
I mean, I'm probably
like,
gonna make nothing off of it because it's really hard to get
but
published.
It becomes a worldwide. But it becomes a,
you know.
I mean, self-publishing is possible, but like,
then how do you market it? You know, you have to do that yourself. It's now
a phenomenon. But I'm saying if you reach a point where it's like an actual phenomenon, like it's Hunger Games sought after kind of thing, or Harry Potter. It is the book of a generation.
Then, like, I would get a huge sum for selling the movie rights or something. You know, like there's always ways to get money for big.
But
things.
Would you make money? But if how are movies making money for selling movie rights if it becomes like just not, if it becomes just super easy to just get stuff online? Like if it was legal in the US for me to watch anything I wanted anytime, like I would have like 2 or 3 subscription services I definitely wouldn't be paying for.
I don't know. They make it
that means the money would no longer be flowing into that market.
The subscription services,
if it's all legal,
make it so much more easy to get it than pirating. Pirating, you have to like go to websites that sometimes have viruses on them, like risk all that stuff. Currently, you know, you have to get a VPN or else your ISP will scream down your head about, you know, don't pirate stuff, it's illegal. But like if that wasn't, so that's removing one step. You don't need a VPN anymore. But then, you know, it's still, you have to have a program on a computer that has access to good internet. And then you have to, you know, surf around for a while to find one with the good amount of seeds, because not everyone seeds. And you have to download. It takes a while for it to actually download, and it downloads in chunks that are all over the place, so you can't like stream it. while it's downloading. Then once it's finished downloading, then you have a file, and you can't really like just bring that file to your TV if your computer isn't plugged into your TV. You know, how do you get that? Like, you'd have to maybe put it on a thumb drive and stick it into your Xbox or something and hope that the format is right. You know, it's so much more convenient to just log on to Netflix and click play. You know, so they have that convenience over it. So that's the way the industry will survive, is to create a service that is more convenient than pirating for a price that makes that convenience worth it.
Is pirating possibly inconvenient because it has to be underground?
The only part that makes it inconvenient about it being illegal is that you have to get a virtual private network so that you can mask the stuff from your internet service provider. Otherwise, like, you know, CenturyLink is going to see that you are sharing, you know, on a peer-to-peer thing, because that comes through in a specific way over a network, and they look into what exactly is going over that peer-to-peer establishment, that network, and if that's something that they've been told to scan for, you know, if it's bits of information that they've been given by companies that says, you know, flag this, then they'll send a letter to you saying, we'll cut off your internet if you keep doing this. So
yeah, no, I know how it all goes, because in my house I have a rule that you don't pirate because it's not you who's going to have to deal with the internet company. It's me. And I'm not playing that game because I'm not going to lose my internet or get fined or something. But like, I get all of that, but I'm saying, when it becomes if it were to become legal, is it possible that a lot of the things that inherently make it inconvenient could start disappearing because it no longer needs to be underground? Also, I can see other inconveniences appearing. For example, companies might start making money by, instead of going, okay, well, we can't, like, we're losing too much money off streaming, so here's what we'll do. We're going to start offering money. Like, we can't stop the companies that are just giving away our content. So instead, we'll just essentially give them like, hey, we're going to give you a crap ton of money if you put these advertisers in the middle of these videos, kind of thing. Like, I know you hate advertisements, but that's the first, like, for you, I think that could be a killer for you of the whole thing. Because for you, I know that would suck because you hate that.
Well, if it's a file, I can just fast forward through them. I
mean, what if next they create a way that you, like, whatever the format is, you can't do that? Like, because I know DVDs, some DVDs have that. Like, you can't fast forward through some of the stuff. Like, it won't let you.
You can't download a DVD.
I'm not.
You're downloading a file.
True, but like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it could be done. I'm not saying it has. Like, I'm not saying.
I guess the possibility.
I guess I
is
shouldn't
there.
even say. Yeah. They will find new ways to make money, and you might like those a lot less. It might ruin the whole point of it all. Like,
but if they do that, then I'm sure more people who hate that will find a way to mine that out of it and put up another version without the ads on another website, you know, on a website of the people that aren't getting paid to put the ads in to the torrent. So it's like, someone's going to find a way around that. It's the internet.
Yeah.
It's just, how deep are you willing to go to find that? So, and most people are not willing to go deep at all. Most people are just like, well, it's on Netflix, I'll just pay for that. Or, well, I saw it on Redbox, so I'm gonna get the Redbox rental, you know? Or like, hey, Amazon has it for like $5. Sure, I could do that. $5 and I can watch the movie, you know? So it's like,
yeah, I guess part of my worry comes from, so I'm not anti-capitalist, but I'm definitely anti-greed. But I'm afraid, like, I also don't like the idea of what greedy people might do if we mess. Like, I think there's ways you can, like, they can't really do much to you, but like in this case, it's the entertainment industry, and I like currently I use the entertainment industry, and I personally don't want to see the blowback that could come from this. Like, this idea, I feel like there's a lot that could go wrong, or a lot of blowback that could happen. One, for instance, when I talked about how, like, a lot of directors are moving away from, like, Disney and stuff. What if we don't have the next generation Steven Spielberg because there's no longer incentive? Actually, this is a perfect argument. Your argument for like why like the incentive to become a doctor in the U.S. like would disappear if universal healthcare became a thing.
Well, not
imagine
disappear,
the same for content creators.
Yeah, if they're getting paid less, then less people will want to go through all of that school. Yeah.
Yeah. What if I never get to see the next Steven Spielberg or like the next Jurassic Park, because not Jurassic World, Jurassic Park, like the classic awesome movie. Actually, I did like Jurassic World. That's beside the point.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't get to see the next Jurassic Park, the next movie of a generation, simply because like we got greedy, I guess.
Well, then the next Spielberg is probably going to make an independent film and get paid off Patreon. This is the other thing. They will find a way.
This history buff just came in. I just remembered. Sorry, that part of my brain just kicked in. Movies, VHSs used to be insanely expensive because they were like $100 for like a single VHS, and this was like back when this was back before I was born. So back when I'm 27, so $100 back then is a lot more than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even today we'd think, oh shit, I'm not paying $100 for a DVD. So anyways, so the reason for that was they were afraid that if they started the industry was afraid that if they started giving people a way to view it at home, that it would affect like movie sales and that people would just share it around and find ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it actually the way they looked at it was, well, we need to make it the price of like watching the movie 20 times to make up for that. Or if you were to like go to the movie theater 20 times. So like we actually have seen what the industry does. So I feel like it wouldn't be it would hurt the market because while you're saying it would be inconvenient so people just won't do it, I think it'll drive up the prices of things like Netflix and streaming services and DVDs.
That would be the best way to get more people to pirate.
I can no longer afford it. But I don't want to I don't want to have to deal with that inconvenience. I don't want to worry about viruses on my
I'm saying
computer.
That would be the stupidest thing for them to do.
You wanting it, I mean,
and I don't think they would do that.
It could be stupid, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's happened once, and
but were they right? Did people stop going to the theater? No, they still make bank at box office. Like, it's still. But so they were completely wrong about that.
People repeat stupid things in history, but I'm saying stupid people repeat greedy, stupid mistakes in history all the time. So, like, saying that it didn't work is irrelevant. We've seen what happens when they're afraid of that. And the laws you want out of place are actually what sated them.
Okay.
Those anti-piracy laws. So
I just don't think they would raise the price of Netflix.
The thing I mean, I could see it happening, and I don't know.
I would give you that it's a possibility,
could go wrong.
But I don't see it as very likely as an outcome. Because, like, you can.
I guess my question is, why don't you want to pay these creators?
Like,
why don't you think they should be paid for their hard work?
They should be.
Why don't you? But if piracy becomes that big of a thing, won't that?
It's not going to stop the box office. It's not going to stop people going, for the first couple weeks to see it in theaters. It's not going to stop like any of that, and it's probably not going to stop most of the people who subscribe to Netflix because it's so much more convenient. All it would do is stop the bureaucracy and like red tape and taxpayers' money spending for people and lawyers trying to find ways to get people for doing something that should just be like handing your friend a copy of it. It's that's what it would be stopping. It's kind of like the principle of it, and I don't think that it would stop. I don't think it would really decrease the cost or the price, or not the price or cost, but the income of the creators much at all. Like maybe a little, but not really. Like it's because all you have to do currently is instead of paying Netflix or Hulu $15 a month, pay the ExpressVPN $15 a month, and you've got even more stuff than is on either of those platforms, from torrents. But it's just not as convenient. That's why people don't do it.
I don't know, like just morally, also it just feels like stealing to me. Like, I'm not even a super, I wouldn't call myself super religious. So, like, even for me, that just feels, I don't know. I feel like it could go to a bad place. And it's kind of hard to see where it could go. But I don't know. Like, that's the thing, though, is everything we're saying is mostly hypothetical.
Yeah. It's hard to say for sure one way or another.
But the other thing I could see that I just thought of, too, is that someone might come along and create a service that's still free, but is able to stream everything because it's no longer illegal to do this, like, without any fear of viruses or anything. A service could come out
that is
better
true.
than Netflix and Hulu combined, and it would be, and because it's free, and they're just doing it because they can, and they like it, and they think it's cool, there could be a service one day that just makes it so no one's making any money, period.
Streaming,
the pirates aren't making money.
Streaming should be treated differently than transferring files.
Yeah?
I don't think it would be good for a streaming service to come out that has all of the stuff that's, all pirated and stuff, although many websites already exist that are that. They just don't have apps on your TV that are convenient. But
yeah,
that kind of streaming, that should be, I don't think that should be allowed. But simply giving a file from one person to another, that shouldn't be. So, like, if I were to, when we meet up in April, if I were to plug my phone into your computer and, transfer the Pastwatch audiobook onto your computer so that you can put it on your phone and listen to it when you want, is that, would that be stealing? Are you stealing if you do that? I don't think so.
I mean, yeah, that's the gray area. Like, that's the part I would want, is I would want the parts that, like, that part, I don't think so, because I don't even want to say it's not stealing, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's so much effort that and, like, also so, like, let's be honest, there's, like, no presence on that other than the fact that we just said it on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's trackable, that it's, like, it should be irrelevant.
I just don't see that big of a difference from, like, from the principle of it, the principle behind that, and me uploading those same files to Dropbox and giving you the link.
I'm saying I feel like they're the exact same thing. Yes. They're still stealing. I'm saying we shouldn't go after people like that, because the idea of what you're giving, you're going to have to come to a different state, or even if you lived in the same state, you'd have to visit me and take your time to visit me, and you're doing it in person. So there's really no way for a government to track that. So should that be legal? No, a government shouldn't make something illegal when they're incapable of tracking and enforcing a law. An unenforceable law shouldn't be a law. That's superfluous. That part of the law shouldn't be. Is it still stealing? Yes. Is it fixable? Not really, because it's so impossible to get a hold of. Personally, I would just tell you, Chris, if I want to look into it, I'll buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have Audible. I will get it if I want it. That's actually how I would tell you. It wouldn't be to be rude. It would just be like, hey, I might be interested in this, but I want to show my support by, like, putting my money and income into this.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what I'm going to do. Like, I guess that's what it comes down to for me. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who say I'm being sentimental about it, but, like, I don't know. Like, I think there has to be a line in the sand to an extent, or we will start affecting content creators.
Okay.
Like,
I think,
and again, none of this is provable, but once you open that box, I don't know if there'll be a good way to put it back.
Yeah, as we've seen with many other things like vaping, once you open it, you can't put it back in. You can't make that completely illegal because it's there. But yeah, I think we both right made a good case.
Oh, yeah. I actually, speaking of which, the current vaping law that just passed I would argue that one might be superfluous.
Are you talking about the vaping and smoking raising the age to 21, or?
Yeah, vaping and smoking raising the age to 21.
I just think that really bites for those 19 or 20-year-olds that are addicted to cigarettes. They're like, well, suddenly you have to quit cold turkey. Sorry.
So here's the problem I have with it is, it's still legal. You've just increased the age. And for certain things I understand, because it's a maturity thing. Like, I actually do want, like, as a firm believer in the Second Amendment, I still think you should be 21 before having a handgun, because I don't think a person who just turned 18 should be going out buying something they can put in their coat pocket and carry around.
Mm-hmm.
just because I do want you to have an amount of maturity not to be an idiot with it.
Yeah.
But I still also believe you should be able to have a rifle because you can't tuck that in your pocket. So the amount of freedom, like there's a little less freedom there. Anyways, but like as far as vaping goes, like they're still gonna do it. In fact, you know what? All that's changed for me now? In my life, I now have a bunch of people I know who aren't 21 yet who have asked me or people around me, will you buy me my smoking or vaping products? And I know they're getting it from someone who's not me because I'm saying no, because I'm not going to be a part of that. Just because, again, my principles.
Like, hey, do you want to commit a felony?
Said, but the thing is, like, the real thing is, like, there's no way for them. Like, I could do it and totally get away with it with, like, zero concern. Because we could just go inside my house after I buy it and say it's for me, and no one's going to know I handed it to someone else.
Yep.
And worst case scenario, the cops like try to catch them outside, which let's be honest, like police officers don't have the time for that. Let's say that did happen. I'm just going to say they stole it from me. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Like, as far as I'm concerned, they're the ones who wanted to do the illegal thing. So they have to own up to it no matter what. But I'll throw them right under the bus if I was really put in that situation, which is why I'm also not going to do it. So I don't have to feel like I'm put in that situation. Yeah. The bottom line is I'm not going to prison because you wanted to smoke.
Yep.
So even if I decided to help you. So that one's stupid, especially since, think about this, how many people under the age of 18 were getting a hold of vaping supplies?
Probably a lot.
A lot. A lot.
Yeah.
Vaping in schools was not uncommon in high schools, even middle schools to a degree. And I know there were plenty of people under the age of 18 I was working with and still work with who totally have vape supplies. So it didn't really change anything. All it did was make it harder for those people to get it. And harder, and by harder I mean they need to now give someone like me money who could actually go in and buy it.
Yeah,
and
so I
guarantee
know
the vape store, the smoking store down the street isn't gonna. They're a smoke store. They aren't gonna go after me for this.
Yeah,
because you affected their income, so they could give two shits. As long as I'm not giving it to 5-year-olds, I'm sure they don't give a fuck.
And I know that cigarettes, of course, were 18, but I think I didn't actually know that vapes had that any kind of restriction for age until now when it's raised to 21. Like, I didn't realize that people under the age of 18 shouldn't be vaping. I thought that it was like it was given as like here, you can do this instead of smoking because you can't smoke yet because you're too young, you know?
I think if I remember exactly, it was anything with nicotine in it was illegal for anyone under 18.
Oh, it was the nicotine.
Like the mods and stuff were, yeah. But like, again, I know they had nicotine in them.
Huh.
And there's two reasons I know that. I was told, and they said, well, this is better for me than smoking. And like, not entirely, like it's like kinda, but not really, like different problems are going to arise.
Different problem. Instead of getting cancer in 40 years, you're going to get pneumonia in 3.
Yes, exactly. Or you're going to cause yourself a lung infection, which was the other thing one of the things that caused this thing is we found that a lot of lung infections were happening because of these products.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have nicotine in them. That was the problem. The things that just didn't even have nicotine in them were still just as bad for you as the stuff with nicotine. Yep. The difference is you get the hit of the stuff with nicotine and now you're hooked.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the other reason I know there was nicotine in some of these, because they acted like addicts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard behavior to see or just notice. Like,
yeah.
Sorry. So like this law, I think, all it's done is...
Yeah, go on.
Instead of having a bunch of 17-year-olds who have driven their addiction underground, you have a bunch of 18-year-olds who have driven their addiction underground.
Yeah.
Like you've accomplished nothing.
I think the principle of it is good, though. Like, yeah, this was found dangerous. I mean,
if it's really that bad, we should just make it illegal,
so that you have to be more mature, and your frontal cord, the frontal part of your brain that makes decisions is more formulated at 21 than it is at 18. So that's the kind of...
Yeah. No, that I understand. But like, if it's really that bad where it was that big of an emergency, it just should have been made illegal outright.
But we already discussed how bad of an idea that would have been, you know?
Yeah.
Then it would have just gone to the black market. And then people with unsanitary conditions would be making the juice packs, you know?
I was of the opinion that the price of it would go skyrocket to the point where most people wouldn't be a part of it. Kind of like the majority of people who do drugs don't do heroin because it's, you know, worth its weight in gold kind of thing. Like, well, that was my opinion, because smoking weed requires weed. Smoking e-cigs requires a lot of technology and mechanical.
Yeah,
just stuff.
It would be a little more complicated.
It's more mechanical. So driving it and when something's driven underground, it affects the prices, and as a result, the vaping supplies would just be. Could it still be there with the black market? Yes. Would it be nearly as prevalent? Oh, hell no. It would be the equivalent of all the other things that are expensive on the black market that you can't just make in your garage.
What if they sold the vaping like pens, but instead of calling them vape pens, they called them like smoke makers or something, or you know, vapor. Yeah, so, and make a button on it that's, you know, no one uses, but you can push it and it'll spray vapor out. So like that's what it's made for. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But then everyone just uses it for vaping.
Yeah, I feel like they would have to make sure they crack down on stuff like that and just say, yeah, no. But yeah, that would be the hard part. Kind of like how knife companies, once switchblades became illegal, just started, I don't know, what was it? They just started making assisted openers that weren't technically switchblades, but it totally is.
Yeah.
So I could, like, you would have to make your law a lot more sturdy.
But even so, Mr. has a little nub on it, so as soon as you pull it out of your pocket, it's open. That's even more than a switchblade. And
I'm against the idea of switchblades being illegal. It's an old law from a long time ago that no longer makes sense. I'm against that one just because I don't think a knife, like if someone wants to do something bad with a knife, a switchblade really isn't. Having to use a knife that's like a sheath knife isn't going to stop you.
Yeah.
that's why.
I mean, it'll make you look a lot less cool.
Yeah. True. It won't make me look magic.
Mm-hmm. So,
but yeah. Well, I mean, my example still stands even if I personally benefit from it.
Yeah. So what else do you think?
I'm trying to remember. I thought of one. I'm trying to remember what it is, though.
I've got a couple more. So apparently, in Missouri, for over 100 years, there was a standing kill order or extermination order. That was the word. Toward Mormons.
Interesting.
There was an extermination order toward the Mormons for over 100 years. I started around the time when, of course, you know, Joseph Smith and all the Mormons were there in Missouri, and they were setting up their own communities, and the residents of the other citizens of Missouri really hated them, and they did not want them in there. They thought they were, you know, devil worshippers and stuff like that, and just so there was a lot of fighting, and they were essentially booted out and went to another state.
Real quick,
and
I was just gonna say, as much as I find this topic to be incredibly interesting, I don't think it's in the spirit of what we're talking about.
Well, it's a dumb law that shouldn't have existed.
I mean, I agree, but this is like, dude, by that, like, no one needs to be told, like, I think we live in a time where persecuting people is wrong. Well, no fucking shit.
Until the 70s, you could murder a Mormon in Missouri and would not have any legal penalties. That's pretty scary.
And until I think it was like oh, by the way, everyone, happy Martin Luther King Day. Until the later 1900s, some of my friends couldn't sit on the bus with me. Mm-hmm. So again, I think we can, that one might be it's not superfluous and a bad idea. Actually, I would argue it's not that it's superfluous, it's just horrible and a human rights violation, but
it does
I'm saying the spirit of this one should probably be a little more speed limits, are they necessary? That kind of thing.
Well, it does kind of fall into the spirit a little bit, because it was only used once. Mm-hmm. When there was a massacre of 17 people, Mormons, in a a place. There was like a militia of 100 people that just like killed them all, and no one was tried for that. But then that was like right around the time, like just after it was initiated, and then never again was it ever used. So, and that's basically that would be my
I feel like
idea of it being superfluous.
I feel like that. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I feel like that was it was only written into law just to protect those people.
Probably.
Like they knew they would never be able to get away with it again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also probably didn't think the religion was going to take off like it did, but like they were like, oh, this is just some offshoot little religion that's not going to go anywhere. We only need to kill them once.
Yeah.
Like, they probably didn't think they were going to need to do it more than once. And to be fair, they kind of made a lot like in their area, there weren't exactly a lot of Mormons. And by the time there were a lot of Mormons, we lived in a country where we all know that wouldn't have fly.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, Mormons didn't go back to Missouri until later.
And by then we lived in the early, we're talking about 1900s now, where that kind of shit wouldn't fly.
Yeah.
You know, that shit would have gotten to the Supreme Court and heads would have rolled.
Yeah.
So that was like, we're going to cover our asses once. So when I'm 90, I don't know if you lived at 90 back then. When I'm 50, I don't have to worry about being taken to prison.
Yeah.
Because I can just be like, well, I was just following the law. And like it would, by the time that got through the Supreme Court and everyone got done arguing about it, you'd be long dead.
I think I feel like it would go pretty quickly through the Supreme Court, though. Even in the 1900s, like making it legal to kill people.
No, that's what I'm saying.
That's a pretty fast no.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. By the time the Mormon religion took off and it would have come into question again, if someone tried to pull that kind of shit, it would have gone to the Supreme Court real quick.
But then in the 70s,
so 1900s.
the governor or mayor or something was like, huh, what the heck is this? This is still
Just
here?
Going through the
Oh
books.
my gosh.
I thought this was one of those little nightmares you tell people so they don't become Mormon. This is real?
Yeah.
I just told my kids about this because I want them to be Baptist. No, this is fucked up. This is real.
Well, anyway, so about speed limits, like you mentioned. So what are your opinions on that?
Well, I've heard other people say that they don't like them, and I live in a state where people definitely use them as a recommendation quite a bit of the time.
Yeah.
But as I was looking into it, I'm gonna be honest here. I could not find a modern country. So like when I say modern, I mean not third world or second world. Like the majority of people live in American or like European conditions.
Yeah.
Where speed limits aren't a thing. Or at least in like parts of the world, at least in parts of like the parts of their countries that are like actually built up.
Yeah, cities.
Like obviously like there's like places like in the middle of like Europe where there's no one for hundreds of miles. Yeah, maybe there's no speed limit there. But there's also no like the only way you're breaking the speed limit there or possibly even driving there is if you have like a car there where you're just like, fuck it, I'm off-roading anyways. And I was thinking about it and I was like, here's what I decided on. And this is actually an opinion I have in general about laws. Every law exists because there's a few dumb motherfuckers who are the reason the law had to be made in the first place. And sadly, people like those dumb motherfuckers are going to be born again.
Christian?
It's going to happen. Society.
Sorry.
Society can only move as oh, that's horrible. Society can only move as fast as its slowest people.
Yeah, I get that.
And sadly, ironic, well, not a pun, by the way, that means things like speed limits have to exist. Because yes, so first off, I live in a state where I would not argue that 80% of you would not need this law. I would argue that 99% of them need this law. First off. Second off, and you used to live here, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Second, even if you could make that argument, 1% of America, like, just being like, oh, I can speed 90 down this place because it's not against the law. We're Americans. When we get told you can do something because it's my right, we have a pretty flagrant way of using that right to excess, to a point where other Americans then go, maybe you shouldn't have that right. Even if it's a right I think you should have, you've now made a good portion of other Americans think, yeah, maybe we should take this away. It's kind of like those people who open carried their ARs into a Chipotle.
Yeah.
Could you technically do that legally? Yes. Was that in any way a good? Were you in any way helping your cause, or like was there any reason to do that other than the fact that you want someone like me, who's probably concealed carrying, to cap you in the back of the head? No.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bad idea. You just because you can technically do something does not make it a good idea.
So here's my rebuttal to that. I don't think that speed limits are necessary to keep people driving safe. I think that distracted driving, reckless driving, and unnecessary endangerment are enough laws to keep people from going ridiculous speeds that could cause an accident. And I think that and if someone gets in an accident, they know that they're going to be slapped with at least one, if not more, of those, and fined more than just their accident for that. So, if there's just an additive incentive like that, you can be fined a bunch of money for distracted and dangerous driving, then I don't think you need to have a letter of the law number that if you pass, if you cross, then someone can pull you over and write you a ticket. It's like, and I think so. Why this came up in my mind when we were discussing this was, I did get a ticket recently, and it was technically in a school zone when it was technically active, but it was like 10 o'clock. All the kids were at school already, and no one was there, and no one was even on the road. And I was going. So it decreased the speed down to like 20 instead of 25, which is not a big change. And then I was going just over 35. So like I wasn't even going very fast. Like 35, if I were to hit something, like the car would be able to just back right back up and pull away. No real damage. It would just look ugly. Like there's no, like, it just really irked me that kind of stuff existed. And of course, yeah, there should be flashing lights for a school zone, and if you cause an accident or do something bad in that school zone, then the penalties will be multiplied, so better watch out. But I don't think that the speed limit should go down, and that there should be an arbitrary number where if you go above, whether you're being safe or not, you can be slapped with $100 fine. Like, it just seems ridiculous to me, and mainly to me, it seems like a money-making racket by the government. We're not getting enough in taxes, so let's get these idiots for going 12 over and, make bank, when really they're not being dangerous or evil or, endangering anyone.
So first off, I would like to say we probably shouldn't be comparing so I come from a family of police officers, but or people who were and have law enforcement stuff, but we really should be careful when we shouldn't compare police, despite the fact there can be bad ones, to the mob or Nazis. Well,
it's not the police; it's the government that's made the laws that makes them able to. But the fines are going to the government, not the police.
So you're
department.
saying you say it's not hurting anyone. But so let me give you a side example though. Wouldn't it hurt someone? So you're saying that if I was going 90 down a road, it should be perfectly legal unless I get into an accident.
No, unless you are driving in an unsafe manner. So
but who decides if there's no speed limit? What is unsafe?
Swerving about, going, weaving in between cars in an unsafe way.
Going excessively fast? Would going excessively fast be considered it?
Only if you are not in control. If you're swerving a little, if you're not.
Who decides who's in control?
Well, that doesn't control your steering. If you're swerving at all, then you could be, if you're going really fast and you're swerving, then you could be pulled over and ticketed for, what was the...
So as long as I'm not swerving, I can go as fast as I want, essentially? As long as it looks like I'm in control, I can go as fast as I want?
Yeah.
Essentially? okay, so here's my counter example. And I'm gonna use this as an example just for a deeper thought. You find out that, I don't know, your mom and dad just died because someone was going 90 miles an hour. They weren't swerving or anything, but it was physically impossible for them to stop in that time frame that they needed to stop in, just because your dad's car cut out for some reason outside of his control. And there's my ultimate argument. You are trying to, we have to have places where you can only go so fast, because you are driving 2 tons of machinery, and if you can go as fast as you want, then if there was no speed limit, then as a lawyer, I could easily argue that my client was not driving recklessly. Your dad simply wasn't taking proper care of his car. So now we hit this gray area of whose responsibility is it to make sure the road is to make the road safe. You are driving, like I said, 2 tons of mechanism essentially, and the faster you go, the harder it is to compensate, and the more that can go wrong. And I don't know about you, but I live in a neighborhood with plenty of places where there are turns and stops and people crossing, and the likelihood of something going wrong only increases, especially because of that confined space. And you cannot realistically control your car at those speeds. But the argument of, well, that person shouldn't have stopped should never come to account. What if I'm stopping so I don't hit some person's car, and now you slam into me at 90 miles an hour?
So first off, I don't think that guy is walking out of that. But in the miraculous event that he is uninjured through that or survives, I would say, can you prove to me that had there been a posted speed, that person wouldn't have been going 90 and smacked into my dad's car?
I'm saying when you give people the ability, as I just commented earlier, people who normally wouldn't do things, to do things and use that privilege, they will overuse it. Just the same, yes, there are people who will just speed and be bad, and they will hurt people. But to just tell our society that, oh, we really shouldn't be teaching 16-year-olds, because that's when we start driving here. Or actually 15-year-olds, I guess, technically. Oh, there's no speed limit. You can go as fast as you want as long as you're in control of your car. The reality is there are outside factors all around you. And if you can go as fast as you want whenever you want, then people will start doing it because they can get away with it, and there's nothing stopping them. And those outside factors will have an influence on the person going as fast as they want.
And I can definitely see that. And so
and yes, there is a speed limit that is a deterrent. The speed limit is a deterrent, and the reason for that is people don't like going to prison.
Mm-hmm. So I get that, and I do acknowledge that if you took those away from freeways, there would be an increase in accidents. So what about removing the speed limits from residential and city streets, but any kind of highway or freeway, speed limit?
That's even worse. The places I'm worried about are residential.
You can't even really get going that fast between from red light to red light.
I mean, you're wrong, but so my example is, so just cards on the table here. I have some brain issues where I can't drive. Currently blind in my left eye, and so I'm not driving anywhere. So I've been walking or riding my bike everywhere I go, or I have to use some sort of outside transportation. And I have been hit by a car twice. Once I was really lucky. The other time, it was ironically a police officer making a turn while I was on the crosswalk.
Wow.
But anyways, I can also say on my way to work one day, in a neighborhood, people are drag racing. And when I complained about it once, I found out some of my coworkers were a part of that. and so this stretch that they were drag racing on, I was at a part where there's a small turn to the point where I couldn't see anything. But for the record, I went from hearing the noise of a speeding car and immediately just had this feeling like, I'm going to get back on the sidewalk. I literally just crossed the sidewalk so I could use the crosswalk to go across the street. But before I even touched the sidewalk, I was like in the bike lane. 2 cars just came rushing by me. So keep in mind, I went from not hearing them to 5 steps away from the curb. Before I could hit the curb, they came by me. Residential area.
Mm-hmm.
So these people, and here's the thing, I could figure out where they started from because I found out later, figuring like through context and asking, that they were using spotters. So there was a person at the end and a person at the beginning of where they started, and I got to where they started.
Huh.
It took me walking about 15 minutes to get to that point. So they covered in seconds what took me 15 minutes to walk to.
Mm-hmm.
In a residential area. And if we had had those laws you want, that you're proposing, I should say, that wouldn't have been illegal. And also, like, you would have, and again, we would have had that legal debate of, oh, well, he got hit on a crosswalk, he should have looked both ways. And my lawyer, and then the prosecutor would go, well, it was kind of irrelevant. You were going 90 miles an hour. And then the defense attorney would say, well, that's not illegal. It's his right as an American to go 90 miles an hour.
Don't pedestrians always have the right of way, though? They'd be put away.
Yes.
For manslaughter at that speed.
Okay, but, like, despite that, now let's say, well, also, I've actually seen a lot of car wrecks in that area. And the other reason is because they lose control. Those people who drag race lose control of their car constantly. Mm-hmm. Also, and for the record, while I don't like jaywalkers, and I won't feel bad if a jaywalker gets hit by a car, I don't think if they deserve to die, especially if you're going like beyond faster than you should. So let's say someone was jaywalking and that exact same thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, same thing here. Like, it's just a matter of like, you're arguing, oh, well, as long as they can be in control, it should be okay. And everyone thinks they're in control until they aren't.
Yeah, it would increase accidents. So we should keep speed limits, but I want to bitch about them anyway. So
I mean, because
I hate them.
I get why you are. I get why you're frustrated because you got a ticket in a school zone when school was active and there was no reason to have a school zone.
Yeah, like kids weren't walking around; they were in class. No one was on the streets. Yeah, it just.
But as a devil's advocate here, I'm gonna say a phrase here, and I want you to tell me if it rings any bells. Hey, I wonder if this is legal. Hope not. And that is my closing argument.
It was, hey, look, a police officer. I wonder if this is legal.
Proceeds to do thing he doesn't know if it's legal or not. So, like, that is my closing argument.
Well, the police officer didn't flash his lights, so I guess it was legal.
I mean, you are technically correct, and that is my favorite kind of correct. But again, I'm giving you worst case scenario people with the kind of shit going on here. Also, I'm pointing it out as like I love you, man, but I have to wonder, were you paying attention to if there was the sign there saying that the school zone was active?
No, I was not paying attention to the lights, the yellow lights that were flashing above my head as I drove through. I was heading to an interview and was getting the directions on Google Maps set up. So he could have hit me with distracted driving had he seen my phone, but luckily that was away before he saw me. So...
And he didn't notice you putting it away. Okay. So what I find ironic here is you don't want your speeding to be illegal, but everything else other than the speeding you were doing was totally within your realm of what would be illegal. You just really are upset you got a ticket. That's what this comes down to. Like, all your logic aside, You just really are upset you got a ticket.
But it's more than that. Every day when I'm, going on the freeway and I feel like I could go so much faster than the posted speed. And I know that I can because other freeways are like 80 miles an hour speed limit. And this one happens to be 65 speed limit. And it's like nothing's different about how like many lanes or how many curves this has. It's just, it's different and it's completely arbitrary. So like it just driving on the freeway every day just makes me angry.
Is there more of a curve? Oh, also freeways. I would say freeway speeds are necessary because there aren't residential areas around. The same reason I told my roommate he couldn't ride his dirt bike in my backyard. Because despite the fact that he said he was in control, in the event he loses control, the hole in the house is my problem.
Yeah.
And there's my argument for going 60 in that area where there's houses and buildings and stuff. In the highway, that is much lessened.
Well, anyway. So I was also kind of thinking about, for this discussion about speed limits, talking about like, so maybe if they should stay, then should they, like, could they be increased, or would decreasing them be a good idea for like fuel economy? Like they tried at one point, I think they reduced all the freeways to like 55 miles an hour to save gas on a gas shortage.
Interesting.
A president did that like world or nationwide, I think, through the whole country.
No, I know what you're talking about. I'm actually trying to think if, like, with modern cars, if that would affect fuel efficiency.
I mean, I think so.
Because you're spending, because you're going faster, yes, but you're also spending less time on the road. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm actually now just curious how that math.
No,
goes.
I think it does go in the direction that he was. Yeah, he was right about that. Even for our current cars, because the extra force you need to accelerate up to the higher speed is greater.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the wind resistance, while at the higher speed, is increased, making it so that your engine is just at a higher force output just by default. So it's using more fuel through while you're just coasting. And so
no, you are correct.
Yeah.
I just remembered the math, because you were correct, because it's the same way. It's like 10 pounds of rocket fuel to get a single pound into space, kind of thing. Same principle, just on a much, like, scaling is completely different, but the same principle. Yeah. So yes, you are correct.
So if everyone went 55 on the freeway, where there's no like start and stop and everything, then everyone would save money on gas, but it would take longer to get to the places. So they wouldn't save their time, and that's what Americans were so obsessed with at the time. Was I want to go as fast as is safe so that I can get to work in as little time as possible, so that I can spend more of my time being productive, either sleeping or working or doing some sort of home project before work or whatever. I don't have to leave 20 minutes early because all the freeways are a lot, slower.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was why it changed back, was because people got impatient. But I don't know, if every freeway everywhere was 55, I don't know if I would be as upset, rather than the freeways that are jumping up and down between 80 and 65 and all that, just because they wanted to.
I think a standardized freeway speed actually is a very smart idea. I feel like for residential and cities, it has to change based on what is around. Yeah, that's true. Because you need people to go slower in an area that just has more
exits,
turns,
more merging,
and buildings and exits. Yeah. But in a freeway, I feel like, I feel like a standardized speed would be better. It also would decrease the need, like the amount of highway officers needed and people to enforce said problems, because you don't have to worry about what is the speed here. It's just if they are going over the speed, we got them. And I think most people who are getting stopped on the freeway for speeding are people who are just speeding flagrantly, not oh, I didn't realize it was 75, not 65 here. It's the people going 80.
Yeah.
Because, so...
Although, I mean, if the speed limit's 75, I'd probably go 80. just because they're not going to ticket you unless you're going 10 over, in most cases.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think that it would be as...
But then if I'm mistaken, that's 15 over or 19 over, instead of just 5 or 9, which would be ridiculous for them to write a ticket for that. That would just be
it's standard. Yeah, so that would be it's the difference between a ticket and a warning. So it's standardizing it, I think, would be actually good, because then also you're not it's not 65 in this, it's 75. Why aren't you going faster? It's always 75, guys.
And then
so if you ask why is he going 75, it's well, that's the speed limit everywhere, dude.
Yeah, and I always hate it when the freeway changes speeds, because you never know. Is it when I can see the sign that I can go faster, or is it I have to pass the sign before I can start accelerating up there? Or if I can start accelerating as long as I'm not there yet when I pass it, is that okay? Or what's the etiquette there for when it switches between speeds? It's always and if it's going to slow down, can I go my speed all the way until I pass it and then start slowing down, or do I need to be at the speed or under the speed limit by the time the sign passes me? What technicalities can I get away with here?
I'm all for standardizing stuff, so I agree with that. And I feel like a government could easily argue that interstate travel could be under federal control.
Yeah.
So that could be a federal law passed, and I feel like most people wouldn't have much I don't think most people would fight against it, and B, I don't see many people. If as long as it was an acceptable limit, if the standard was 55, I could see some people getting out of shape. If you told everyone the standard is 70, a good in between the normal speeds, I think most people would be oh, I just like that if I'm on the interstate, I know I have to be at 70. Imagine living in a world where you could just set your cruise control to 70 if you're on the interstate. It's
no matter where. You don't have to look for
70.
signs, Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's easier on everyone.
I can just imagine Alex Jones screaming endlessly about how the government is overstepping their bounds and getting in the way of his state's speed limits, and they're trying to control everything because they're turning the frogs gay, and everything's wrong with the moon landing and the flat earth and sorry, what?
I guess fair enough. Let me rephrase. I don't think anyone whose opinion actually matters. In case I haven't made my opinion clear on this, fuck Alex Jones. Any of you who like him, I'm sorry, but fuck him.
Well, anyways, I think it's about time to call it. Do you have any closing remarks about these superfluous laws?
Yes. I think sometimes we think they're superfluous, but we don't know what the actual impact could be if we got rid of them. Just because things that are mundane, things that feel mundane, we don't realize their impact until they're gone or appear in general. So it's easy to disregard something and without thinking about all the consequences. Mm-hmm. And as my final remark, fuck Alex Jones.
I once heard it said, and because that reminded me that it was Ben Shapiro was describing his view of what a conservative and what a liberal would do when they come across a fence in a area. The liberal would say, well, let's break down the fence. We don't need it. And the conservative would say, well, why is this fence here? Let's look into it. And maybe we want to keep it. So that's the kind of difference. Let's look at these laws. Maybe there's some merit to them. And if we just got rid of them, maybe there would be violence and blood in the streets. So,
you're adorable when you just generalize. Entire groups of people.
No, I thought that was funny. But anyways, so I guess. Did you have anything else to say?
No, I think I made my stances on certain things clear.
Cool. So this is going up on Google, Apple, Stitcher, podcasts, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Got an RSS feed, so you can plug it in and get all of the content as soon as we put it out there. We're going to be releasing these on Tuesdays now. I know I missed last Tuesday, but I will try to not make the same mistake twice. And then if you have anything to say to us, any rage, any questions, any comments, we will read them on the show. If you send them to nothingspecialtypodcast@gmail.com, and I will read all of those. And then we also got a Facebook page and a Twitter at Nothing Specialty on Facebook and at Nothing Specialty without the G on Twitter. So look into all of that, follow us, and give us likes and give us all the internet creds so we can get pushed into the faces of more beautiful people.
And don't forget to decide if whether or not I should stay stuck in the internet.
Oh yeah. Send us, tell us your opinion on Ben and his trapped in the internet conundrum.
Next, we'll go in. Should I listen to the voices in my head?
Yes.
Stay tuned next week.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. We'll see ya.
Good week, everyone.